Reil Chaneke Kumlen and Ablat Gemara. This is Zeis Chaneke. The Gemara is Chaneke Daf Tzadik Tes. So the Mishnah basically told us that we learned yesterday that a Tvul Yom, somebody who went to the mikveh and has to still wait for the sun to set, or a Mechusik Purim, somebody who, a Mitzvah, for example, that even though they went to the mikveh and everything else, they still cannot participate in karbanos until they bring a korban the following day, and called Mechusik Kippurim. Until then, he's lacking Kippurim, so they don't get distributed any kachim in order to eat that night. They don't get any distribution because they're not suitable to eat at the moment during the day. An oinen, somebody who is in a state of mourning after a close relative, a parent, is if he touches a korban, it does not become tameh, but he cannot participate in the avodah, and nor does he get a distribution. But then we said that somebody who has a defect, a balmum, is an exception, even though they cannot serve in the Beis Hamikdash. There's a special pasuk that says, Kol Zocher, we learn out that they are included. And we had two reasons why. And basically, Rabbi Yosef said, because the Torah said that the kohen that does the mechate, the one who does the sprinkling of the blood. So Rish Lakish says we learn from there only those who were row to do avodah are get a chelik in distribution. But Rabbi Yosef says it says hamechate oisa yechlena, eat it. Now, we're talking about distribution. If they get a chelik in it, so why do we use the word yerchlena? So we learn those who are suitable to eat right now, they get a chelik, and those who are not suitable to eat right now, even though it might be suitable tonight, that's right now, they don't get a chelik. So now the Gemara continues a couple of ibayas. First from Reish Lakish. So we're right in the middle of the page of Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph, about 20 lines on the top of the page. The boy Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish asks a question. A balmum. Someone who's a mum who cannot serve in the Beis Hamikdash, yet we had a special pasuk that says that he's entitled to eat. But who tameh? And he's tameh as well. Is ma'u sheyach lo'kolei. What's the din? Do we give him a distribution or not? And what's the question? L'chayda, a tameh does not get a distribution and not suitable to eat. But the thing is, because he's also balmum, and first he was a balmum, and even though he's not suitable to eat, nevertheless, we get, even though he's not suitable to do avodah, nevertheless, we give him a chelik. So maybe now that you add another layer of tumah, maybe comes part of the same exception, that even those are not suitable to do avodah, they should still get a chelik. Is the main thing is if somebody's suitable to avodah? And since the balmum is an exception, the fact that he's also tumah makes no difference? Or is the main thing that they are suitable to eat? Not because I'm suitable to avodah, they're suitable to eat. And the balmum is suitable to eat, therefore he gets a distribution. Mashenkein, someone who's tameh, is not suitable to eat. So even though this person is a balmum, but if you add the layer of tumah, it's a problem. That's the main question. What is the main criteria here? Somebody is suitable to mechat, to sprinkle the blood, or somebody is suitable to eat in the Beis Hamikdash before they get a distribution. So Baidish Lucky, Balmum Bu Tami, Mao do we give him a distribution? Kivin Lechazi, since he's not suitable, Rahman Rabbi is a Balmum, and the Torah added it as well. And the main problem is he's not Shaykh Tavoida, but Balmum also not Shaykh Tavoida, and yet he gets a distribution. So Leishnam makes no difference. Mali Tami, Mali Balmum is the same thing. They're both not suitable to Avoida, so they both, if it's the same person, once we've gone exception, this drags along. Or maybe the main focus is not on if you row to avodah, but rather are you suitable to eat during that day? And therefore, a balmum is suitable to eat, therefore gets distribution, but you're not. Therefore, your tameh is not row. Which one is it? Amar Rabba said, "Our Toshma coming here." It says in the Tosefta, "Kohen Gadol, makriv oinen." A Kohen Gadol is an exception. A Kohen who is an oinen is not allowed to do any service to the Beis Hamikdash, but a Kohen Gadol is. Because a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to be betamit to anybody else. He can do the avodah. The einu oichel, but he does not eat at all from the kabbalas that day. The einu choylek lechol. And even though that night is permitted to eat, you don't give him any distribution right now because he's not suitable to eat. But he could do the avodah. So what does that prove? What's the main criteria? Not whether you could do the avodah, but whether you're able to eat. If you're suitable to eat, shmamino, good raya. Rabbi asked a very similar question, the following. Tamei bekarbanot tzibur. When it comes to a karban tzibur, if everybody is tamei, then it is tuma hutra b'tzibur. They can do the avodah, but then it's still not, they're not allowed to eat from that carbon, but they're yaitz of the carbon. So what happens to the individual is tamei? If an individual is tamei, so potentially he's suitable to the avodah if everybody else also was tamei as well as him. So therefore, potentially is suitable to the avodah, but there's no potential to be able to eat because he's tamei. So there's this thing that says here, he asks the same question. Does he get a distribution? He's row avodah, but he's not row to eat. So what's the main focus on whether you row to avodah, whether you get distribution, or whether you row to eat that time to whether you get distribution? Me, I mean, you say mechatam rachmad v'hanam mechatam ulachayid is row to the avodah. You can sprinkle the blood if everyone else is tummy. I didn't row lachil chaylik. Only the suitable to eat. Lachil and chaylik. Ravina said, Ravina, Toshma, come in here. Koyin Godol Makriv Oinen Veinu Eichel Veinu Chelik. He's suitable to do avodah, but he's not suitable to eat. And it says they clearly Veinu Chelik Lechel doesn't get distribution. Shmamano Ro Lachil Veinu Shmamano. The main thing is whether you're row to eat or not. Oinen Noigeya Veinu Makriv. So what he's saying in the Mishnah that an oinen can actually touch a carbon, and he's not metame the carbon, but he's not suitable to do the avodah. Oinen, so you might ask a question. You say, Al-Mishnah says clearly Oinen, again, Oinen can touch the carbon. Let me ask a question. What I mean, we learned clearly in the Gemara, Chagiga, it says there in the Mishnah, Oinen and Oinen. And Mechusikapurim, Tzrichim Tvila Lekaidish. They need to go to the mikveh before they can touch the chaylik, before they can touch kachim. Clearly argues with our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, so first answer we give is like kasha. Can Bishit Tava Al Mishnah is talking about he already went to the mikveh, and therefore he can touch. And can the Mishnah Chagiga Bishit Loy Tava didn't go to mikveh, so first he has to go to mikveh. Says the Gemara, if he's still an einan during the day, what helps going to the mikveh at 2:00? When as soon as he goes out of the mikveh, he's still an einan, becomes tummy once again, reverts back to his tumah. So what's the point of going to the mikveh? How's that help? How can our Mishnah say that he can touch if he went to the mikveh? It doesn't help go to the mikveh. If he told him how, so what do we mikveh? Hadr le'aninis, comes right back. If an einan, while he was an einan, went to the mikveh, then he comes right back. So what did he gain? That he might like catch. Right. Nothing. The reason why an einan has to go to the mikveh is not because an einan has to go to the mikveh. Nothing to do with that. It's to do with, generally a kohen was very careful, maintain their kedusha, because they're always ready to do avodah. But if this person is an einan, knowing that he won't be doing any avodah, so he relaxes sort of his vigilance over tumah matters, because he knows he can't do the avodah anyway. But sometimes, like some kohanim, even though they cannot do the avodah, still will maintain their vigil. So therefore, the Gemara asks this: if he's Mashiach das from being careful, knowing that he cannot do any kachim, that's why the Mishnah Chagiga says he has to go to mikveh. Don't do the ninis; it has to do with the fact that he wasn't careful about maintaining his tahara. And our Mishnah is talking about the Hadar. Our Mishnah he was not Mashiach das; he didn't remove it from his mind. He was still very vigilant, and therefore you don't have to go to mikveh. Says the Gemara, if a person was relaxed and he wasn't vigilant, then what helps go to the mikveh? You need a lot more than mikveh. You have to wait for Harav Shemesh. In fact, more than that. Maybe you touch a dead body. You need then to get hazah sprinkled the third and seventh day, and yet it seems that that night is all right. Is it? I ask a question. Only why is an einan he has to go to mikveh? So the Gemara hesach hadas. If so, shlishi v'shvi boy. You need a lot more than just going to the mikveh. You also have to make sure that you clean also from tummy mess. As we know, said, Greek name. It sounds like Hesech Hadas, Tzodech Hazor, Shlishi Yishvi, that Hesech Hadas, if someone's Hadas, they got to also get purified from tummy mess, the third and seventh day. Saying like Kasha. The reason why over here it seems to be saying all you have to do is wait for at night and not wait for the 7 days was a partial Hesech Hadas. When do we say that you have to go through the whole process of Tara if you weren't careful at all? And Mishnah is talking about that you were careful from touching a dead body, but you weren't careful about touching a rodent when they ate shratzim. Now, the problem is that Tumah Sheretz is Tamei Mahatayra, not just going to the mikveh. You need a lot more than just going to mikveh. You have to wait for the sun to set, for example. And yet our Mishnah, the Mishnah seems to say all you do is go to the mikveh. If we're talking about he wasn't careful of Tumah Sheretz, then why is mikveh sufficient? Question number one. If we mother Tommy Sheretz, then Tommy Malyu, his mamish Tommy, head of Shemesh boy, not just going to mikveh, you have to wait till sunset. Why does the Mishnah there in Chagiga say that all he needs is tefillah? All he needs is to go to mikveh. What about head of shemesh? And furthermore, why is it says here only lekoidish in order to kabbanis? He has to go to mikveh, even for truma, for trumanami. If somebody touched the sheddas, he cannot eat truma until he goes to mikveh and waits for sun to set. So we're going to narrow it down further. That what there's a partial. Generally speaking, he was still very careful, but now we know that like this. When it comes to chulin, it's basically the avos and avatuma, and then you have a rishon and a sheni, and it ends of the sheni. So avatuma can make a keli tame and a person tame, but a rishon tame can only make a sheni tame, can't go any further. So a rishon tame is called tame. Because anything that can contaminate and defile others is called tameh, is a category of tumah. And the sheni, which is the second generation, cannot go any further, is called pasul. It's the recipient of a tumah, but it cannot travel any further. By truma, we go one more step. By truma, we say it goes through shlishi. So if a sheni touches a shlishi of truma, if a sheni touches truma, the truma becomes a shlishi, the shlishi is pasul, and the sheni is tameh. By kachim, we go one more generation. So the shlishi, a shlishi touches a kodesh, the kodesh becomes a revi, becomes pasul. The shlishi is tummy. So Abiyim says, you know what's talking about over here? But you said, nishmarti medavar hamatamani. I am very careful for something that makes me tummy. I wasn't careful medavar hapaislani. So I was careful for anything that can go further, but I was not careful from the end of the line from paisel. So therefore, it only applies to kachim. Because something apostle by kachim, by truma doesn't go that far. Truma only goes to shlishi, and goes no further. This was a shlishi. So by kachim, it goes one more step to the V. So he said, I was careful of every kind of truma. So even for truma, I'm not worried because it's only a shlishi. But as far as kachim is concerned, it's only an isabedirabanan, and therefore you don't need hair of shemesh. All you need is mikveh. So that Mishnah Chagiga is talking about that I was not careful from something that makes it possible. In other words, I wasn't careful from a shlishi, and therefore, I have to just go to mikveh and no further than that. So therefore, we're not worried about truma because I was careful not to touch a sheni. I just wasn't careful about a shlishi. And that's Gemara said, now Gemara's not going to be happy. Says the Gemara, do we find such a kind of shmira which is only partial shmira, that you basically maintain shmira for everything except this level? And we said, yes, because by Tanya we learned. The basket is still on your head. And you have like a shovel inside which you use to separate the figs. They all get stuck together, they bond together, and you want to separate it. And you said, and this is all made out of metal. He said, Libi ala sal. I was very careful about the basket, make sure that it does not become, remember, keli can only become tummy from an avatuma. I was careful that it should not become an avatuma. And I was also careful it shouldn't become tummy anyway. And he said, Libi ala basket, ve'ein libi ala magrifa. But I wasn't careful as far as the shovel goes. And therefore, the shovel might have become a shlishi, whatever it is. I wasn't careful on the shovel, but the basket was all right. So the Gemara asks if the shovel became tamei. Is the one first says hasal torah magnifa tamei. So the basket is torah because you were careful; it shouldn't become tamei, but the magnifa becomes tamei. Fred the Gemara, if so, is why doesn't the titma magnifa the sal? So why doesn't the basket make tamei? Why doesn't the basket make tummy why doesn't the shovel make tummy the basket? Says the Gemara, ain keli metame keli, because the shovel itself is a keli, and a keli cannot be metame another keli. Okay, what about the food? The figs themselves. Food is mekabel tumah. Why doesn't the figs become tamei? You said yourself clearly that the magrifa becomes tamei. It doesn't say the basket is tummy. It says the magrifa becomes tummy. So why doesn't the food inside become tummy as well? Because it seems clearly from here that you're focusing on the only thing that became tummy is the shovel, and the figs don't become tummy. Why not? And because Oimer said shmartia. I was careful medavar hametama. I was careful that it shouldn't come in contact with anything that makes it tamei. I was not careful medavar hapoisla, I was not careful from the final stage, something that's going to make it possible. And therefore, whatever it is, for chulin, I wasn't careful from let's say, a rishon, which will make it a sheni. So this shovel is a sheni. For truma, I was careful from a sheni, which will make this sheni coming in contact with it, which makes it a shlishi. But at the end of the line, or from kachim, I wasn't careful from a shlishi that makes it a via. Each one of them is the end of the line, but it's no longer able to transfer the tumah anywhere else, and therefore the figs don't become tamei. However, so therefore, what do we see from here? That I was careful as far as truma is concerned, and I wasn't careful as far as kachim. We see that you can have where you're careful only a certain stage and not another stage, and therefore the same thing going back to the Gemara before, that it says over there that that you need only tevilah for kodesh and nothing else, is talking about because truma, I was very careful. I shouldn't touch a sheni, so therefore, as far as truma is concerned, there's no problem. Can't go any further. But as far as hekdesh is concerned, it's a problem because hekdesh goes to Revi. I wasn't careful with a sheni, which makes it mir shlishi, and therefore I can metami it to the kachim. That's why kachim and not truma. That's the Mishnah Chagiga. It says Mashiach al Mishnah, you were careful the whole time, and therefore you don't have to go to mikveh. And the going to the mikveh has nothing to do with being an oinen. It has to do with your Masir Das. But in our Mishnah case, you weren't Masir Das. Says the Gemara, just one answer. Another answer is what it says, Galgul Milsa, the whole discussion was passed around in other yeshivas. Came before the and he said to them, no, but again, we're asking the question between our Mishnah that says that an oinen can touch it, and the Mishnah Chagig said, oinen cannot touch it. So what's the difference? So we gave one answer. But Hetzechadas, we're not so happy. They said, that our Mishnah talking about you weren't Masir Das, you didn't remove your mind, and you were very careful. The other Mishnah talking about you were Masir Das partially and partially. You're not Masir Das, that partially we're not very happy with. Amalei, he said to them, Shmuel, didn't you hear on Rabbi Yechon or Rebbe? Didn't you what Rabbi Yechon said in the name of Rebbe, which he said that ha'oichel, if somebody eats shlishi shel truma, if somebody eats a shlishi of truma, the din is, now we said before that shlishi doesn't go any further, but the person who ate it, asur lecha, the person who ate it, he is not allowed to eat any more truma, but he's allowed to touch truma. Umuta liga, he's allowed to touch truma. And therefore, there's no exterior between the Mishnah Chagig and the Mishnah Amish. Our Mishnah talking about touching truma. Talking about the person ate. Our Mishnah talking about touching truma, so there's no problem. The Mishnah Chagig is talking about eating truma, and you're not allowed to eat truma. Alma ba'achila avad rabbanon ma'ila benegila rabbanon ma'ila. More strict with eating than with touching. Says then the Mishnah says the Mishnah says that an oinen touches, but he's not participating in the avodah, nor does he get a distribution. So it seems the Mishnah he'll get a distribution. But if you invite him to eat, he's allowed to eat. So an oinen is permitted to eat. The our Mishnah seems to be saying that an oinen can eat, but Navas he cannot. He does not get a chelik. He's not getting a chelik. We're talking about at night when his post is aninis, and when aninis is over, even though we won't give a distribution during the day, knowing that at night he'll be mutter, we don't give him a distribution, doesn't get a chelik. But if he's invited at night, he can. But I mean, I'll ask you a question. It says in Gemara Pesachim that an oinen goes to the mikveh, like we learned, he has to go to mikveh more than chagiga, just like before. An oinen has to go to mikveh to eat, but oichel as pischai, and he could eat his korban pesach le'erev that night. Have a labor kachim. It says he cannot eat kachim. You just said from our Mishnah it seems that he can eat, just so it doesn't get distribution. There it says clearly he can eat from the pesach, but not from the kachim. What's going on here? Now, aninis mahatayra is during the day, and the following night is an argument. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it continues to the following night. Rabbi Shimon says no, aninis of the night is only rabbanon. Kacharisa kiyemar, that there's only one day, and it's only also rabbanon. Therefore, when it comes to korban pesach, it's an Easter of karis. We don't want to hold you back, so the rabbanon suspended the Easter. You're allowed to eat the korban pesach the following night, but not any other korban. And even though the mitzvah say to eat, the Rabbanan is still decided that the post aninis is still considered an oinim with the Rabbanan. and you cannot eat from the kabbanis. The Hakam Mishnah seems to be saying that he could eat. The Gemara Amar Rabbi Medit for the Kasha. Can be Pesach. Here we're talking about a korban Pesach. Can be Shayim Moisa Shana. There's a difference between our Mishnah is talking about the korban Pesach, but not only korban Pesach, but all kabbanas that night. Once we permit you korban Pesach, you can eat any korban that night, and that's why Mishnah seems to be saying that he could be participate. But the Mishnah in Psachim that says that B'loi Kachim is talking about all other nights. He's not allowed to eat Kachim all other nights. So Kan Pesach, Kan B'Shai Moisa Shana. Pesach on Pesach, our Mishnah talking about Pesach that is that he doesn't get distribution, but nevertheless he can eat. I did talk Pesach since he can eat from the Pesach. Ochanami Kachim, he can eat all other Kachim. But the Mishnah in Psachim is talking about B'Shai Moisa Shana. The Lechazi, and because it's not suitable Lechazi. So what does it mean? Since he's not eating anything, the night since during the day he's an onion. At night he's onion the rabbanon. He cannot eat from kabbanos. So what does it mean? Avaloi b'kachim doesn't mean the night of Pesach. Avaloi b'kachim should call Hashanah. The rest of the year he cannot participate in kachim. Rabasi says like kashim. He gives another answer. Rabasi says it's not a question. Kan shemes le'meis ba'arbos. He said you can even argue that our Mishnah is talking about Pesach by night, and the Mishnah is talking about Pesach by night. Our Mishnah says he can participate in other kabbanas, and that Mishnah there says clearly you cannot participate in other kabbanas. And it sounds like he's talking about Pesach by night. What's the difference? He says it depends. If the Yom Misa, the day the person the deceased, and the day of the burial was the same day, then the Aninis is Mahatayra, and the following night was Rabban. But if it was died one day and was buried the following day, then there's no Aninas the following night. So our Mishnah is talking about that he was an Oinen during the day because it was the burial day, but the death day was the day before. Therefore, the end of that day, that following night is not an Oinen at all, and he can eat from all kabbanas. That Mishnah was talking about with the Yom Misa and the Yom Kvura was the same day. And therefore, the following night, he's not allowed to eat from other kabbanas except the korban Pesach. Says the Gemara. He died on the 14th day of recovery. He buried on the 14th day, so therefore, the following night is an oinen, at least with the rabbanon. But all of the kachim he cannot eat except korban Pesach because of the koris and kanshmas. He's talking about he died on the 30th day, buried on the 14th day, and Yom Kavura, the day of the burial, on its own, like Tafis Leilim with rabbanon. It's not Tafis with rabbanon. Since Yom Kippur itself, the whole Aninis is only with the Rabbanon, so it does not drag along the following night. Says the Gemara, Man Tan Aninis Rabbanon. Who Bechlal learned that this Gemara Psachim that Aninis is the Rabbanon? You're telling me that if the Yom Misa and the Yom Kippur is the same day, and that's the Mishnah Psachim, then the following night is only with the Rabbanon. So all kabbanas you cannot participate in except the korban Pesach. Who is the one who says that? Says the Gemara, Rab Shimoni, that follows Rab Shimon. The Tanya we learned. Aninas Laila, one opinion says that the Aninas of the following night is Mahatayr. And we'll see the Gemara. How do you know that? We'll learn that from Aaron. It's the whole story in Parshas Shmini. And Dive Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon says, Eina Bedayv. It's only with Rabbanon because it says Lachrisik Yemar. It's only one day, and it'll be like one bit of day because that's all it is, one day. Teda. And Rabbi Shimon says, I'll prove it to you. Shari Amru, because we say that in the Gemara Pesach we just mentioned before, oinen toivel, that an oinen goes to the mikveh, but oichel as pischol edit, it can eat the korban Pesach at night. Now, how in the world, if you're telling me he's an oinen mahatayra, how can he eat a korban Pesach? An oinen is not allowed to eat kabbanas. But if you tell me that aninas at night is only with the rabbanon, so we'll say all of the rabbanon leave the prohibition in place and they interdict against eating kabbanas. Masha'en when it comes to korban Pesach, because there's karas involved, rabbanon suspended their east and said, go ahead and eat. So we see clearly that's a pshat. Says the Gemara, you're going to tell me that you can tell me that with Sover Rab Shimon holds that Aninas Lailas Midrabanan. I'm going to prove to you that Rab Shimon himself holds. You tell me Rab Shimon who holds the Rabbanan, but Rab Shimon himself holds that you don't bring korban Pesach. But Tanya Rab Shimon says that an oinen ain't a mishaleh kabbanas. Rab Shimon says that an oinen does not send his kabbanas and korban Pesach. What's going on here? That sounds like an oinen cannot participate in the korban Pesach even though you're sending it to somebody else, you're not involved. Why can't you send your Korban Pesach? Because at night you're not going to be able to eat Korban Pesach. So my love, afilu b'Pesach. It seems from here we're talking about that we're talking about Korban Pesach, that an onion is not allowed to send a Korban Pesach, and must be the reason is because he holds you're not allowed to eat it at night. You just said that the opinion that says you're allowed to eat the Korban Pesach at night is because it's only Midrabanan, which is Rab Shimon. And Rab Shimon clearly holds that a Korban Pesach cannot be eaten that following night. So what's going on here? So you want to know? No. Levar me Pesach. It means it's talking about all other kabbanas. When Rab Shimon says that an oinen does not send his kabbanas, it didn't mean Korban Pesach. He meant stam kabbanas. But Korban Pesach is an exception. Rab Shimon said, you're right. Shimon said all other kabbanas, even though it's only also Rabbanan, we don't want you to participate. At night you don't have, therefore don't send it by day. Korban Pesach is different because the Korban send it by day because you need it at night. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? What Tanya, we clearly learned that Rab Shimon says, Rab Shimon, we're going to prove Rab Shimon holds that a Korban Pesach cannot be eaten at night. And what's the story? Rab Shimon says, Shlamim kishu. Why is it called a shlamim? So you say, you know why it's called a shlamim? Shlamim kabbanih kishu shalom. Shalomim when you're complete, when you're whole, and not when you are an oinen. Is maybe you can only bring the carbon when you're complete, when you're whole, and not when you are an oinen. You obviously had a loss, and you're not whole. So now we're continuing. So menayin, okay, that's we know a carbon shlamim. That's what the word shlamim is. They have to be whole. Now we're going to go through all the other kabbanas. How do we know that an oinen is not allowed to participate, not allowed to eat from them? Menayin l'rabbis at how you know you cannot eat a carbon toida? Mar b'neis at you can eat a simcha. Kishlamim. Carbon toida is very similar to shlamim. When it comes to Pesach and Yom Tovim, you have to have a chiyuv of samach techegech carbon simcha, and we know that shlamim you eat with a carbon toida just like a shlamim. It's like a shlamim, and therefore shlamim is an oine cannot eat, nor can eat taida. Okay, how do you know too that an oil is compared to a shlam as well? The only kabbalah you can bring a ned and dove, voluntary carbon, is either a shlamim or a carbon oil. So it's similar. How do you know to include a b'choid u'maiset and says clearly Pesach? It says clearly here Pesach. I don't include them, but they're also all like shlamim, and therefore you cannot eat from it at night. These kabbalah like shlamim that have nothing to do with a sin. What they do have to do with sin? What comparison is there between those two kabbalas and the shlamim to say that an oinen should not eat from it? It says the pasuk zevach shlamim, any carbon is included. Menayin l'rabbis ha'ifas birds and menachos and flour offerings, yain, wine, eitzim, wood, either carbon eitz or carbon wood itself, or Rashi said the carbon you brought with the wood. The halavain and frank incense, how do you know as well an onion does not participate? Shlamim, carbon no, it says carboni, any carbon. Whole carbon maybe because you shall maybe only bring it when you're whole, when you're not an onion, but maybe because you're onion. Tonic says clearly here, me a Pesach. How can you say that Mishnah Pesachim follows up Shimon that at night is only with Rabbanan? And therefore, Korban Pesach, we suspend the Isa de Rabbanan for an onion, and we say, go ahead, eat the Korban Pesach. When Shimon clearly says over here that he includes a B'choid and a Maisa and a Pesach to be compared to Shlam, that your onion cannot eat from it. Tonic Pesach. Or Pesach Kadi Nasba. There's a Pesach was brought there just in line with everything else, but actually it doesn't mean Korban Pesach. Doesn't mean it at all. So the Gemara doesn't mean it. Rav Shesha says, no, the Korban Pesach, Rav Shimon actually holds you could eat at night. It was just brought there by the way, but it's actually not significant. Rav Shesha says, no. You know what Pesach means? Shalmei Pesach. We know that if you don't have enough meat in your Korban Pesach, you have so many participants, each one only gets a kazayis, and you have to eat it when you're full. So you bring another carbon called your Chagigas Yudalad, the Korban Chagiga of the 14th day. And that, so he's saying here that carbon, the carbon that you bring with the Pesach, an oinen cannot participate that night. My Pesach, Shalmei Pesach. Carbon Pesach, just like that Chagigas Yudalad is like a shlamim. Literally. So what do you have to say? Why do you separate them as if it's a different kind of a carbon? So I think about it is. He learns there shlamim on its own. Habayim machlas pesach shlamim that's associated with the current pesach, and tana shlamim habayim machlasin. There are two kinds of shlamims, one on its own and one you bring current pesach, and each one of them an oinen cannot participate. Why do you have to stress both? Could Ela tana shlamim machlasin pesach would not have mentioned a shlamim current pesach. I would say very simply, okay, shlamim an oinen doesn't eat, but a shlamim that comes with the current pesach, since we allowed the current pesach to be eaten at night, and the shlamim comes in order to support the current Pesach, because we're scared you might, as the Pesach brings the Tzlachim, you from the Yerushalmi, you might break the bone. So we say, eat this current Pesach so that you're full, pretty full, so that you're not going to break the bones to suck out the marrow. So therefore, maybe it should have the same din of the current Pesach that an oinen should be able to eat. So I would have thought, Hoyel Machnat Pesach Hosi, Kigu for the Pesach has the same status as the Pesach. Kamashlan that no. Rav Modi gives another answer to reconcile the two, the Rav Shimon and Rav Shimon. But Ramadi said the following: like Kasha, Ramadi says there's no question. Why is there no question that over here, Kan Shemesloi, over here is talking about you? What? There's no question for Rab Shimon and Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon holds that at night in Gemara Pesachim there it seems Rab Shimon holds it at night. The anin is only Rabbanan there for the current Pesach you can eat. And over here, there's other one that we brought. This Brisa says clearly that Choyer and Meiser and Korban Pesach, you shouldn't eat. How are you going to reconcile the two? So one answer we gave was that ignore it, didn't really mean it. Another answer we just had, Ravashi said over here that we're talking about not the Pesach itself, but the Korban that comes with the Pesach to support it. Now we're giving a third answer, and tomorrow we'll learn a fourth and fifth answer. Like Kasha. Similar to what we said before. It died on the 14th, buried on the 14th with Aninis as Mahatoida. So that night, which Aninis Rabbanon, you don't eat the Korban Pesach. And therefore, that's what the Brisa says, don't eat the Korban Pesach, or Aninis shouldn't eat. But there, the other one, the Pesachim, it says, Shemesh Lemes B'Yugimel, where it says you could eat, is talking about when the person was, the father, let's say, or the mother was deceased on the 13th. The kvara b'yadalad, and you bury on the 14th, so you're only in oinim midrabanan on the 14th, and therefore the following night is mutter. That if you died on the 14th and you buried on the 14th, then you're in oinim mahatoida, and it goes into the night as well. Goes into the night as well. That means even according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda holds that Mahatoida the following night. And it seems that the Gemara here holds, at least according to Rabbi, that even Rab Shimon would agree that the following night is Mahatoida. And therefore you cannot eat the Korban Pesach, and that's what the Bryce is on the bottom of the page. But the Mishnah on top of the page where it said that an Oinen can eat the Korban Pesach is Meis Le'Mez B'Yugimel, 9 and 13, the Kavara B'Yadalit, Yom Kavura is midrabanan. Since the day is only rabbanan, then at night b'chal not an oinen. Then ein teif is leila ela midrabanan. This version is that it is still asa midrabanan, and there's two ways of learning. Either ein teif is leila em midrabanan. That means that Shimon here, contra Modi, would agree that there's a ninas the following night, but it's only midrabanan, and therefore we allow the Korban Pesach. Or the other version, like we learned before, is b'chlal not teif. Ein teif is leila midrabanan. Not the word ella, omit the word ella. Ein teif is leila midrabanan. Not teif is leila at all. The Omer of Rashi, so Rashi said, "Ramori zeibazei v'helahodik tani." This that it says. The Brisa says, Amar Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon said, "Ted, I'll prove it to you. Shari, I'll prove it to you that what? Shari Amru Oinen Toivel v'Oichel as Pischa and Oinen can eat and Toivel and eat the Korban Pesach. Avaloi bekochi, but not by kochi. So name alei." According to Rav Modi, the Chachamim should say, I know we're talking about Yom Misa, the Raisa, we're talking about Yom Misa for the same day, and you bring me a raya that you're allowed to eat Korban Pesach where the Yom Misa took place the day before. We're not talking about the same thing. The Amli is Yom Kavura the Rabbanon. You're talking about Yom Kavura, which is only the Rabbanon because the person died the day before, because you're saying that it's talking about two separate events. Kasha is taka problem, but nevertheless, that's how Rav Modi wants to learn how to reconcile the Mishnah and the Brisa, and that the Mishnah is talking about where the person died the day in 13th and buried in the 14th, so therefore the Aninis is only midrabanan, and that's why on your Pesach night you're allowed to eat Korban Pesach. And the Brisa is talking about where he died and buried on the 14th day, and therefore the aninus of that night is Mahatayra, even according to Rab Shimon, and therefore you cannot eat from the Korban Pesach between tomorrow and Mitzvah Shem.